In the last video, I went through the beginnings of this Ring Planet project. And in this video, I'm going to go over the ideas and the concepts behind this conceptual game, because I was just kind of making it up as I went along. So the idea for the actual ring structure, that's nothing new. It's been in lots of different science fiction. In terms of my inspiration for mega structures of this kind of thing, the Citadel from Mass Effect is probably the biggest inspiration. There's also a book I like by Arthur C. Clarke called Rendezvous with Rama, which really gets across the scale of an object of that kind of size, and just the inherent weirdness of having a planet which stretches all the way around and up and over you for an illogical distance. And the actual setting and mood is unsurprisingly inspired by Blade Runner. Like pretty much everything I do is inspired by Blade Runner, but yes, heavy cyberpunk theme here, industrial dystopia, etc. And in keeping with that theme, in this game, I came up with the idea of you playing as a detective. I like the idea of you solving mysteries, and I think that kind of game best lends itself to the first-person narrative kind of style. So obviously games like Gone Home and Firewatch were big inspirations behind that. And in terms of making a game, it's just best to keep it simpler, not necessarily easier, but simpler. If you're making these games by yourself and you're kind of learning as you go, there's a lot of stuff to learn. So dealing with programming AI, even shooting a gun at enemies, that's quite a steep curve to learn. And I feel like I lean more into the visual style anyway, over programming and gameplay and all this kind of stuff. Ironically, when I said keep it simple, that's far easier said than done. I don't have any formal writing training or academic accomplishments in that area. So when you're coming up with a story, you're always kind of thinking, is the scope of this too big? You have no reference for how long you can make your game realistically, because you've never really made a game before. And then of course there's a question of, is the story even any good? Because I'm sure everyone thinks stories that they've written are interesting and engaging, but the truth is, the worst written things were done with the intention of being good. And then you think, I'm overthinking all of this, so there's that problem. I'm saying all of this because the story wasn't set in stone and it changed quite a bit, but the rough outline is. You play as a detective for the Police Defense Force, and you investigate a series of strange goings-on that begin to happen. The people in this world are equipped with something called a V-brain, which is like an electronic device you just pop into your head, and it's like a smartphone. You can call people, record things, message people, look at the news, etc. And there is also kind of this online virtual reality space where people can go. It's like a video game, kind of like the metaverse, although I came up with this idea years before the metaverse, and this idea has been in science fiction even years before that. So it's a place where people can go online and do things in a virtual space with other avatars. So we come in when there have been a series of suspicious grave robbings. So people have been dug up and had their now obviously defunct V-brains harvested. And you have to investigate why. The character of who you play, obviously, considering my inspirations, I had Rick Deckard in mind, but that would have been way too obvious. And I actually became inspired by an episode of a TV show I watched called Electric Dreams, which was an anthology series released quite a few years ago, and they were based on books written by Philip K. Dick. Every episode was like a self-contained story. And the particular one that caught my attention was one called The Hoodmaker. One of the reasons I liked it is because it reminded me of Blade Runner, except in a different setting. I really loved the architecture, the mood, the feeling, and that's when I got into this whole brutalist vibe. And I started doing a bunch of research on brutalism and brutalist concrete structures. And this is kind of a downside of making games by yourself with no experience, no scope. You can just go off in a direction and just keep going. Meanwhile, the actual game doesn't progress. I was inspired by the main character of this episode, and I was thinking, almost every game, TV show is depicted as having an American main character. And if it's not American, it's like the normal English accent. So I thought it'd be really different if we just had a Scottish protagonist, or someone with a Scottish accent at least, because presumably Scotland doesn't exist in this world. Or does it? This is where it gets a bit confusing, because at this point the project kind of split into two. So there was the Rain Planet, which is this one, and then I began a new project called The Inverted World, which is a story for another video, but they are pretty similar, and they even share lots of assets and stuff like that. And to be honest, even I get confused when I'm talking about them sometimes. But we're talking about the Rain Planet right now, and the idea was there would be this huge industrial ring, and there would be obviously corruption and crime because it's a cyberpunk world and it makes it kind of interesting. I had an idea that the ring would be split into areas towards the top, even though it's arguable if there is a top and bottom, in space. But on the north side of the ring, there would be slightly different terrain. For example, there would be a forest, an artificial forest. There would be a mountainous area. This would be marketed as the dream holiday destination. Of course, only a select few could afford to go there. There would be a big wall and a desert, which could house anything. It would be a mysterious part of the ring. I did attempt to put these into the map that I made, but it's a rough guide and you probably wouldn't know unless I just told you. And ultimately the game would have you going to different locations, discovering things, picking stuff up, spinning them around, getting clues, coming to conclusions, and the scope of it did kind of run away from me at this point. I made some key maps for the game, which I'll be showing in the next video. You can walk around them and interact with stuff. But the project has kind of been in limbo since then. I have been able to show off the maps to people and they've enjoyed it and thought it looked cool and everything. And I'm pleased with the stuff I've done on it. I've learned a lot I learned a lot doing this. It's been a couple of years now. But if nothing else, this really did help me learn how to use Unreal Engine. And I'm planning on doing one of these conceptual deep dives for most, if not all, of these videos that I do on unfinished games. And I suppose I could conclude them by giving an update on whether I intend on finishing the project to kind of wrap it up. This project, I can't really necessarily see myself finishing it. And I think that's the first time I've actually said that to myself. This series was kind of intended to go over old games and see if I could find the motivation to finish them. And on the first one, I'm telling you I'm not going to finish it. The reason why, I think this was a good practice project, but the story was all over the place. If there wasn't even a finished story here. I do like the idea of the Rain Planet. I could always reuse that in another project. Actually, a lot of the themes in this game have kind of morphed over into the Inverted Planet project. So that's kind of an evolution of this in a way, which is probably why I don't see the need to finish this. But I suppose it's good to know when to, cut a project off. But if anyone here thinks differently, thinks I should finish it, then let me know. The next episode will be the final part of this particular project, and I'll show you all of the maps that are done so far. And after that, I'll be moving on to the inverted planet project, which is what this game ended up becoming and what I'm actually working on now. So until the next episode, hope you enjoyed and thanks for watching.